So you're an advisor to the Singularity Institute for Artificial Intelligence in America, aren't you? What do you?
Yeah, a number of years ago I was when it was first forming, and
Okay.
I still give input every now and then.
Mhm.
Um,
Okay. Do you still go to the conferences at all? You've been to one?
oh, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought the last one here in San Francisco was quite good. Very
Mm.
focused on biological brains, which was an
Mm.
interesting shift, I thought.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. What I think Irene Pepperberg was speaking, and
Yeah, very
James
the bird.
Randi, was that right? Yeah.
Uh-huh, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Some
yeah. The
interesting.
bird brains are amazing, and some of the things that there's some YouTube videos of what crows do. Unbelievable. They create tools.
Mm.
Crows want to open up nuts, and so they drop nuts from a great height onto a rock to break the nut. And once highways showed up, they figured out, oh, that's a good place. So they started dropping them on highways. And then they figured
Mm.
out that, oh, cars run over nuts, and that's good. But then the cars get in the way, so they discovered crosswalks. And there are crows that will drop their nuts in crosswalks and then wait by the side of the road until the light turns green and then go pick up the pieces. I mean, just amazing insight into human society.
Great.
Yeah.
Oh, I wonder. I mean, they don't have opposable thumbs, but I wonder if we didn't evolve, then what would have been the next species to sort of evolve into a hyper intelligent organism that created technologies like we have today or something similar? I wonder if it would have
Yeah.
been crows or octopuses or dolphins or something like that. Mm,
Yeah, it could very well be. If they develop
mm,
some sort of way of manipulating the physical world more precisely than
mm,
their current uh,
yeah.
appendages.
Yeah, it'd be pretty hard to do that underwater.
Hmm.
Yep. Yeah, wire up an electrical circuit, no worries.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. So, all right. Well, yeah. Well, actually, I'll check on Hugo's last question. Let's have a look if he's still there. So Hugo's right into the idea of like Artilex and Cosmos and
Hmm.
Terrans and all that. I
Yeah.
prefer the normal terms like Luddites and hyper intelligence. But um,
Hmm.
what do you think about this Terminator? Well, it's not quite the Terminator scenario. It seems like this very negative uh, sort of view about the future, that our children will die and super intelligence will be unfriendly in a sense, and the idea of friendly super intelligence is a, a dangerous delusion, as he likes to say.
Hmm.
What's your comments on
I certainly
that?
hope that's not the reality. I mean, I think his basic sort of battle between, as you point out, the Luddites and the technologists. I think that's a real phenomenon. I mean, you just look at the sort of issues that are really hot in the news today. Things in
Mm,
biology, things like stem cell research, abortion, cloning, all those issues, I think, are little mini versions of some of the questions that are going to come up as technology moves along even further. And so I think probably nobody would complain about fixing disease in the human body.
mm,
Um, and then when you start talking about changing the genome to fix genetic diseases, that still sounds okay, but now it's getting a little closer. And then people start talking about, well, aging is a disease. What if we stop aging and we become immortal? Now a lot of people start saying, wait a minute, what? We're going to become immortal? And then you go to the next step and you say, well, I don't just want to fix my child's diseases. I want them to be smarter. I want them to be more beautiful. I want them to be stronger. I'm actually design my child. And then suddenly, so there's a line somewhere in there where I think different people sort of draw the line at different places where they start getting uncomfortable. And these technologies will make those decisions. Right now, we don't have to grapple with that. That's beyond what's actually technologically possible today. But it won't be for very long. Biotech is moving really rapidly, and so we've got to face it. And that's it's something that it's some of the biggest questions I think humanity has ever had to deal with, and it's very, very important. And I'm sure there are going to be strong emotions coming up around it. And if we can find ways to make the dialogues productive, I think that would be a great benefit. And so conferences like the Singularity Summit, I think, are an opportunity to get people beginning to think about some of these things and finding a framing where it doesn't just come out of left field and scare everybody.
Yeah, I do really do. I think education about the possibility of the future being far more technologically advanced than we assume, and education around what's available today with technology and some of the social impacts is very important. So, what are your views on how to educate people and the public about these?
Well, I think these intelligence technologies actually will help a lot with education. I'm a big fan of the Khan Academy. I don't know if you've seen that.
Yeah,
Um,
that's great, isn't it?
yeah, he just lives a few miles from here. I've seen him speak a few times.
Yeah,
Young guy who just makes videos teaching, things he knows about, and people all over the world are watching them and learning them.
he
It's
seems to
another
know
one of these
about a lot of things.
media that just is transforming the very nature of how learning works. And I think it's just, the tip of the iceberg, and that we'll see a lot more of that, and that the current approaches to teaching and learning are going to look really archaic before long.
Hmm.
There's a lot of talk about the gamification of education and of business, where a lot of these video games really tap into human motivation in a way that people literally become addicted to them, and they become incredibly skillful within those video game worlds. Well, you might as well apply those same things to learning skills about the physical world, around the real world. And so I would expect to see, dramatically more effective teaching and learning tools, and also personal development. I mean, I'm a big fan of looking at your own behaviors and doing various things to become more effective in the world. And I think these technologies, and also technologies like neurofeedback, measuring your own brain waves and training yourself to become aware of what you're doing with your brain and learning to be more effective with it. I think those technologies are going to help a lot in helping people deal more effectively with the world.
Yeah, definitely. Well, what can we do today? I mean, like, I live in Australia. I'm putting on assumption it's an okay idea, but what can we all do today as a society to help educate the people around us and help bring awareness to some of the important developments in technology and help them to inspire them to start thinking about the future and in a different way and challenge their views of the future in a sense that
Yeah. Well, I think in-person summits, like you're putting on, that's a great thing, because there we really can meet the people in person. You can ask questions. It's very, engaging. I think video is a tremendous medium.
mhm.
You're going to be producing a documentary, right?
Yeah,
Is
well,
that?
I'm collecting a lot of interviews, and I think some of the things, some of the points that have been put across in the interviews are great, and there's a lot of different perspectives. So I'm hoping to sort of create some form of kaleidoscope of different views and these sorts of things, which is what I have now, and hopefully be able to put them together in such a way that is easy for people to understand, but
Yeah.
also inspires them to think seriously about the future and not just superimpose today's technology into future and say, hey, well, maybe in 2020 we'll have iPhone 10.2 and it'll be extra amazing with blinking lights and
Graphic.
great gadgets. But to think about transformative technologies and how it may actually shape society and just become mentally prepared to take these things on when they really do come along. Um,
Yeah. I think a lot of the core questions are really not so much about the technology. That
yeah,
we pretty much know, with nanotechnology, we know what's going to be possible to
yeah,
some degree.
yeah.
And what we really need is envisioning what we want. What is the ideal of human life and human existence, and what kind of society do we want to create? What kind
Mm,
of interactions? How can we
absolutely.
express our compassion, our gifts, and our meaning in the world?
Mm,
And I think those are things that every person on the planet can think about,
yeah.
and the technologies can make it happen.
Yeah, that's true, and it's very interesting to sort of see a reasonably near-term future where real where we've got incredible enablement through technology. It sort of really does drive us and really does force us to rethink our assumptions about what what we want, or not assumptions, or rethink about what we want and our assumptions about what we'll get in the future, according to how we start planning now and what we sort of the activities that we do today, and what sort of fruit they'll bear in 20 years.
Exactly.
It's very, very interesting to think about these sorts of things, and it does bring up some very profound questions. I mean, I don't know about other. What's your opinion? I think we do live in a very profoundly different world today than we did even 50 years ago, maybe 100 years ago. Um, in a sense that the sorts of questions we're asking ourselves now, with sort of view to some of the enablements of technology in the future, well, the sort of questions we're asking. I mean, do you think it's replacing the sort of questions we were asking in church or in sort of religious circles, or in a sense?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's a very different world now than it was 50 years ago. The questions, in this country, World War II had just finished, and the U.S. and Russia were in this big battle, and the nuclear weapons were preeminent. Many people felt it was inevitable that the planet would be blown up by nuclear weapons, and so I think that was sort of the dominant thinking about the future and the fear there. And the images, things like flying cars and so on, which haven't yet come to pass. It's fascinating to watch movies like 2001, which kind of created a certain kind of an image. Space was beckoning as the great frontier. 2001 AI was an important part of the story, but it was not it was a negative force in the whole system. So yeah, it's a really interesting question how our views of the future and what questions we're asking are evolving. And I think these technologies are going to force us to ask deeper questions. That when we don't quite understand like how intelligence works and what the possibilities are, we can deal with it at one level. Once we start building these systems that are truly intelligent, I think that's going to really shift our own perspective on ourselves and on what's possible and on what the nature of reality is. And I'm guessing we're probably going to discover some surprising things. I think that the current, scientific consensus is, probably a lot of it's correct, but I think that there's probably a lot that's, there are extra things. And so I think it's going to be a really exciting time intellectually as these things start unfolding.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think like what you're saying is correct. There is a bit of a danger that if we don't really figure out what we want at a deeper level than what sort of car we're going to buy, or what sort of makeup we want to put on, or whether we want to buy Gucci or some other brand or whatnot, start thinking about the real what we really want as a species, as humanity, as evolved beings in the future. If we don't do that, I mean, we could get something we could be stuck with something for a long time that we don't want. We could be
Right.
driving ourselves into hell, in a sense.
Something very superficial. There's another recent development has been the whole field of positive psychology, which is, psychology used to be a kind of disease model, like, oh, what can go wrong with human minds and how do we fix them? How do you get rid of phobias and depression and anxiety and so on? A few decades back, Seligman said, hey, let's look at what's good about humanity, what's the best of humanity, and created the field of positive psychology. And they started studying, well, what is happiness and what makes people happy? And so at least in one model, there are sort of three levels of happiness: hedonic, Eudomonic, and Cheronic, I think is the word, where hedonic is sort of external things that make you happy, like, oh, you get a new car, you get in a new relationship, you make some money, you get a new job, and those things seem to last about 3 months. And, if you win the lottery, maybe it lasts 6 months. And then you're left hungry again. It's not deeply fulfilling, and you're looking for the next shiny thing to make you happy. The eudaimonic is where you express your gifts in the world, where you really connect to how you can help other people, how you can contribute, and by doing that, that brings a sort of deep level of satisfaction that can actually last for a long time. And then the Cheronic is a connection with something larger than yourself. And I think a lot of spirituality and religions play that role for many people, or people have a mission which is greater than themselves, patriotism for a country, or the sense of contributing to the unfolding of humanity, a kind of evolutionary experience of being a part of this larger thing. Those, I think, and that's sort of the deepest level of happiness, at least in this model. And so I think by looking at those kinds of things, and maybe at Maslow's hierarchy, the base level of the hierarchy is just plain survival, and as you move up, it's sort of creating love and connection and having some status, and then being able to give your gifts, and then at the top is sort of self-actualization. And I think understanding those different levels and not getting stuck at too low a level is going to be one of the challenges as we move forward.
Yeah, right. It seems like a big challenge, but what would you do as if you were the president of or even the governor of California? What would you do to sort of promote the awareness of these technologies, or promote the more higher forms of happiness, or motivate people towards higher forms of happiness, and to figure out what they really want in a technologically enabled future?
That's a really good question. One approach to trying to generate interest is by having these prizes. So there have been the X Prize in a bunch of different areas. And they seem to be pretty effective ways of leveraging small amounts of money into a large amount of impact. Something to encourage people to envision and write about, utopias, visions for the future. Create conferences like the summit where people can discuss these kinds of questions. To make it really engaging, I think having something which has some teeth to it would be a good idea. I don't quite know how you would do that, but maybe create little artificial societies. Patrick Friedman is talking about building societies either on floating ships or
Seasteading,
seasteading, or he was just telling me that there's a possibility that they may be in a third world country, that some of these third world countries may section off parts of their land for experiments in new society. And I think those kinds of experiments could really give rise to some very, very interesting insights into different ways of organizing and living.
That's very interesting. I mean, I like the idea. I mean, people have been experimenting with societies, haven't they? What Buckminster Fuller started describing a world where, at a molecular level, you could get certain sort of design principles which held together very strongly. You had these buckyballs, or I don't know if he actually found those. Did he? Maybe he did. Anyway, very strong structures made of many polygons.
Geodesic,
That's sorry. What was it called?
Structures, yeah.
Geodesic dome structures, and you had the hippies create geodesic dome structures and started creating like an anarchic society, which is an interesting experiment.
Apparently very cool, but they leaked. The problem with the domes was that they leaked.
Yeah.
They were hard to seal the upper triangles to keep the water from getting through, but they were very nice to live in because from the outside they fit very naturally into the environment. So they look smaller than they are from the outside. From the inside, everywhere you look, the walls are sort of perpendicular, so they actually look larger than they are. And so they're really nice as a space, but practically as an architectural tool, they're kind of a pain to work with, I've heard.
Okay. Did you try and live in one of these yourself?
I haven't, but I've had friends that have had them on their land, and so I visited them, and you had the feeling. It's a bit strange having a circular space that you're in, but quite nice, really. The acoustics are a bit odd too, because you can get focal points, where you can be on one side of the dome and somebody on the other side, can hear you in a whisper. So
that's interesting. Yeah. So So what am I thinking? I've forgotten my next question if I had one.
Well, we can continue in Australia too, I think.
Yeah, that's right. That's
Don't need to get all the questions answered here.
Yeah, that's true. That's right. Now you've done some studies into non-violent communication. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And have you done any writing on that?
Nothing significant. We've explored a number of different ways to structure community so that people are able to express sort of their deeper thoughts. In addition, nonviolent communication is a really nice tool developed by a guy named Marshall Rosenberg for communicating at the level of thoughts and feelings. Some other tools, David Bohm, the physicist, created a form of communication called dialogue. And we ran a dialogue group out here for many years that it's almost like letting a group act as kind of a common mind. The basic rule is that you never tell anybody that they're wrong. That you just allow whatever anybody says to inspire you, and then you share, what that brings up for you. And instead of people getting defensive and trying to say, "Oh, I'm right, you're wrong," each person just inspires the other, and you come up with ideas that no person could have come up with on their own. And so those are both experiments in changing the rules of communication, and you end up with a very different form of a social interaction.
Nice. Yeah, that'd be an interesting thing to read about and try. I guess what the last questions can be. What are you talking about at the summit in Australia? And also at Monash University, you'll be giving a talk. So you're giving 2 talks in Australia. One's at the Singularity Summit, and the other's at Monash University with Kevin Korb. So I think that would be very interesting. So what are the content of these talks?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to coming. So I think I mentioned a little earlier, one of the things I've been thinking about for many years, actually, are systems that improve themselves. And I discovered that there are certain tendencies that these kinds of systems tend to have, certain drives, like a drive towards self-protection, a drive toward gathering more resources, a drive toward self-understanding, toward self-improvement, toward a certain kind of creativity. And this understanding of these drives comes out of a microeconomic model that was developed by John von Neumann back in the 1940s, and it's called rational economic agents, and it's sort of become the key model in advanced modern artificial intelligence systems. But true rational economic agents are unrealistic because they need too much computer power. And so one might ask, are analyses and understanding based on rationality, do those really apply to real systems, real AI systems, real human systems, real biological systems, real organizations? And there's a huge industry in the psychology these days studying human irrationality, all the ways that humans don't behave in rational ways. And so one might ask, does that apply to AI systems as well? So I've developed a new model of rationality, which I call rationally shaped systems, where you have the precise mathematical model of a rational system, and the system that we're actually concerned with is a realistic, computationally limited system that acts in the world, but the parameters and the design of that system have been designed by the rational system to, as closely as possible, meet its goals. And that gives a mathematical framework that we can really understand it. And we can use that to analyze not just AI systems, but also biological systems in general. And it gives a very nice unifying framework, a way of looking at the development of life, the process of evolution, the process of human learning, the process of how you teach your children, and the way that we're going to build these AI systems. The AI systems are going to improve themselves. The AI systems will build successors to themselves. So it's a nice framework that I'm going to give in the summit. I'm going to give a more popular sort of general talk, and at Monash University I'll go more into the mathematics behind it. And then based on that understanding, we can use that to guide the way that we build the first systems to ensure that they behave in safe ways. And it drives that scenario we were talking about earlier of building safe systems today that will build their successors for the future. And so I'll lay out that whole scenario and perhaps discuss some of the things we talked about here tonight as well.
Definitely, it sounds good. I'll be at both of them, and
Great.
Hopefully we'll definitely be video recording the summit one.
Excellent.
But yeah, that should be really, really good. I'm looking forward to it actually.
Yes.
Yeah, I really appreciate your time.
Thanks so much. It's been good. I've enjoyed the questions.
Yeah, we'll look forward to seeing you in Australia, Steve.
Okay.
And yeah, good luck with the AGI 11 too. It sounds like a really good conference to be at. I wish I could be there.
Well,
I really
maybe by
do.
video.
Yeah, that's true. All right, no worries. Well, yeah, have a good evening then.
Okay, you too.
Yeah, nice chatting.
Bye
See
bye.
you then.